Okay, so imagine for a moment you're standing right there amidst the sheer noise and grandeur of ancient Rome. It's the heart of this colossal empire.
Right. The center of the known world, pretty much.
And the ambition, the scale, the monumental buildings, the power, it's just undeniable. It's a vision that's, well, it's captivated us for thousands of years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. We think of emperors, legions, aqueducts, this image of incredible strength and innovation.
Exactly. But what if?
Mm.
What if you peel back that majestic surface? You find something else entirely. It's a social reality that's so brutally split. It's almost dizzying.
It really wasn't one society, was it?
No, not really. It was two societies completely intertwined. Yeah, but just fundamentally opposed, diametrically opposed.
And that's what we're diving into today. We're not just looking from afar. We're taking a plunge, a deep one, into this profound split, this unyielding chasm that separated the Roman citizen from the Roman slave. Our mission here, if you like, is to really excavate the personal realities, the legal, the psychological, the day-to-day. What defined these two ways of being? We want to understand not just what they did, their jobs or whatever.
But how they actually lived.
Exactly. How they lived, how they saw their world, what these fundamental distinctions really meant for their actual humanity.
And we're going to unpack the incredible privileges that came with citizenship, stuff we often overlook, and then the harrowing abyss of servitude that, let's be honest, underpin the whole damn system. And we'll even touch on what freedom actually tasted like for those few who managed to cross that chasm, because it wasn't always straightforward.
Well, it wasn't simple.
Because, as we're going to discover, Rome's big idea, libertas, freedom, this powerful, almost sacred concept, it got its sharpness, its brutal clarity from the constant crushing reality right next door. Servitus.
Yeah.
Slavery.
The one defined the other, starkly.
Yeah. It's a raw look, pretty unflinching, at an empire built quite literally on the backs and, well, the broken spirits of millions. And that legacy, damn, it still echoes, doesn't it? And how we think about rights, human dignity, even today, it's unsettling. Okay, so let's kick things off at the top, or what Rome saw as the top, the pinnacle of their whole social order.
Right, the ideal. In their eyes.
Roman identity, fundamentally, it rested on these three pillars. You had status libertatis, basically, were you free or enslaved? Crucial distinction number one.
Absolutely foundational.
Then status civitatis, were you a citizen or were you a foreigner, a non-citizen?
Another massive dividing line.
And finally, status familia, your position within your family. And being the pater familias, the head of the household, that was huge.
That was the apex. To be a freeborn Roman citizen and the pater familias, that was the ultimate social and legal position. Maximum power, maximum agency within their system.
Now, these Latin terms, they might sound a bit dry, a bit bureaucratic.
Yeah, like dusty legal jargon.
Yeah, but the reality, anything but dry. These weren't just tick boxes on a form. This tiered identity, it dictated everything. Absolutely everything about your life.
Every single facet. Your legal standing, obviously. Could you even go to court? Could you sue? Could you be sued in the same way? Your economic opportunities, could you own property? Enter contracts.
Your social interactions, who you could marry legally.
Right. Iuris connubii. Could you pass on your citizenship, your property, legally to your children? Your basic sense of security in the world? It all stemmed from this.
And citizenship. It wasn't like today, not some universal birthright for everyone born within the borders. No way.
Not at all. It was a jealously guarded privilege, a deliberate, powerful tool of exclusion. It created a very clear us versus them.
From the moment you were born, you were slotted into this predetermined legal reality. It didn't just influence your future. Often, it completely dictated it.
It's fascinating when you compare it to modern ideas. Universal human rights, the notion that everyone had inherent dignity just by being human. Rome's system looks, it looks profoundly alien from that perspective.
A real historical anomaly. It forces you to confront how different societies have structured themselves, how they've valued human life.
Definitely.
Okay, so talking about how Rome wielded power and citizenship, let's look at a really interesting case. The Caracalla Edict, 212 AD.
Ah, yes, the Constitutio Antoniana.
On the surface, it looks amazing, right? Emperor Caracalla just grants full Roman citizenship to all free men living anywhere in the empire. Huge deal. Sounds incredibly enlightened, progressive even, like a massive expansion of rights.
It does sound that way initially. a grand gesture of inclusion.
But there's always a but with Rome, isn't there? What was really going on? What was the catch?
Well, this is where you really need to look at the imperial machinery, the context. Caracalla wasn't primarily motivated by benevolence. The empire was in dire financial straits at this point. Serious money problems.
Oh, follow the money.
Pretty much. By granting this privilege, this citizenship, to millions of free provincials who didn't have it before, Rome instantly created millions of new taxpayers.
Oh, right.
Suddenly, all these new citizens, from Britain to Egypt, they were subject to Roman inheritance taxes, which were significant, and the tax on freeing slaves, the 5% manumission tax, and other duties previously only paid by existing citizens.
So it wasn't about rights, it was about revenue.
Primarily, yes. It was a massive, almost predatory expansion of the imperial tax base, cleverly disguised as a generous act of universal inclusion. It was a brilliantly cynical piece of financial engineering.
Damn. That really lays bare the transactional nature of Roman rule, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Every privilege granted often came with a hefty price tag for the recipient and a big gain for the state.
It was strategic extraction, pure and simple. It tells you a lot about how Roman power operated pragmatically, often ruthlessly.
It makes you wonder, even today, how often are increased responsibilities or financial burdens framed as privileges or acts of inclusion? Are there modern echoes of Caracalla's maneuver?
It's a perennial question about governance, isn't it? The subtle art of extracting resources while maintaining legitimacy.
Okay, let's shift to what citizenship felt like. This idea of an unbreakable shield. It wasn't just a legal term. It shaped how Romans carried themselves, that inherent confidence.
Yes, the psychological impact is crucial here. It wasn't just knowing the law abstractly. It was the deep-seated feeling of being protected by the full might of Rome.
Right.
This was fundamental to their persona, their identity, their sense of self-worth in what was, let's face it, a pretty brutal world.
You could walk differently, talk differently.
Absolutely. Imagine a Roman merchant, maybe wrongly accused of something in a far-flung province. He could stand tall and declare, "Civis Romanus sum," I am a Roman citizen. And that declaration carried immense weight. He could invoke legal procedures, protections, potentially saving him from arbitrary punishment or extortion.
Wow. That phrase had real power.
It allowed them to move through the world with an assurance, a baseline security, that non-citizens, and especially slaves, simply couldn't fathom. Their basic safety was, to a large degree, legally underwritten.
And a huge part of that shield was due process. The right to a fair trial, aedicium, and crucially, the right to appeal, aedis provocationis.
Yes, this was fundamental. No citizen could just be punished on the spot by some magistrate's whim. There had to be a process. And if you felt a magistrate's decision was unjust, you could appeal originally to the people's assemblies in the Republic, later to the emperor.
That seems surprisingly modern in a way. A check on power.
It was a critical check against the arbitrary abuse of power, especially given how much authority local officials could wield. It made a radical difference. Think about the sheer terror of facing immediate, unchecked judgment versus the solace, the possibility of knowing there were channels, appeals, a system designed, at least in theory, to defend you.
It wasn't perfect, I imagine.
Oh, far from perfect. Justice was often slow, certainly expensive, and heavily biased towards the wealthy and influential. But the principle was there. It created a world of difference compared to having no recourse whatsoever.
That image contrast you mentioned, the senator arguing his case versus the slave being punished.
It was a constant, brutal, visual reminder of that legal chasm. It was played out in public daily.
And it gets even more visceral. Protection from degradation. Citizens were shielded from the really horrific stuff, torture, whipping, crucifixion.
Exactly. These weren't just punishments. They were methods reserved, quite explicitly by law, for slaves, for foreigners, for the other. It was a public statement.
A statement written in pain and humiliation.
Precisely. It was a gruesome, public declaration of the social hierarchy. Seeing someone crucified wasn't just seeing punishment for a crime. It was a terrifying, visceral object lesson for everyone watching about the paramount importance of Roman citizenship. It drew a literal, blood-soaked line in the sand.
This wasn't about being humane then.
Not in our sense, no. It was about maintaining rigid social order through spectacle and terror. It reinforced the value of citizenship by showing the appalling alternative. Fear was a key tool.
And you know, even today, Think about highly publicized trials or the intense media focus on certain punishments. How much of that still serves to reinforce societal norms, to draw lines between us and them, even if it's less overtly brutal?
The impulse to use public judgment as a social marker seems deeply ingrained, doesn't it? The forms change, but perhaps the function persists.
Beyond just protection, citizenship was the key to power and advancement. Political rights, like summaris suffragiu, the right to vote.
Crucial in the Republic, though its influence waned under the Empire, still symbolically important.
And for the elite, communis honorum, the right to actually hold public office, to climb the ladder.
The cursus honorum, yes. The path to real power and influence.
And economically, huge advantages. Emeris commercii, property rights, contracts.
The ability to legally own land, run businesses, engage in commerce securely, absolutely vital.
And aureus connubia, the right to a legally recognized marriage. That sounds basic, but it was critical.
Critical for ensuring your children were legitimate citizens, inheriting your status, and crucially, your property. It was the foundation of generational wealth and continuity for Roman families.
But these weren't abstract ideas. They were the actual levers you pulled to build a life, build wealth, secure your family's future.
Exactly. Without these, you were fundamentally locked out.
Yeah.
Imagine a Roman father using his ennius commercia to acquire land, his ennius connubii to ensure his son inherits it all legally, along with his citizenship status. That whole framework was completely denied to a slave. Their children just became more property.
Generational security versus generational bondage.
Starkly put, but yes.
And it wasn't just rights. There were duties, too. Big ones. Military service, a Marius Militiae, for male citizens.
A fundamental obligation, especially in the Republic,
Yeah.
but also a major opportunity. Military service wasn't just a burden. It was a path to honor, to social mobility, and potentially to immense wealth through spoils of war. Successful campaigns brought back vast riches, lands, slaves, gold, much of which filtered down to the citizen soldiers.
So duty and opportunity went hand in hand.
Very much so. It was a transformative crucible for many. And on the flip side, citizens often enjoyed exemptions from certain taxes, especially those levied heavily in the provinces. Another concrete, tangible benefit underscoring their superior status.
It really highlights this contractual nature of Roman citizenship, doesn't it? Huge privileges, but also significant obligations, a reciprocal relationship in theory.
Yes, a complex bundle of rights, duties, privileges, and expectations, all designed to bind the citizen to the state and maintain Rome's power structure.
Okay, so we've established this baseline of citizen privilege, but even within that category, massive differences. The daily life of a patrician senator versus a plebeian craftsman, worlds apart.
Absolutely. A chasm within the citizen class itself. Let's paint that picture.
All right, picture the senator. Day starts at dawn in his domus, this luxurious, sprawling residence. It's more than a home. It's a statement.
A power base, almost.
After a light breakfast, he puts on his toga, the one with the broad purple stripe, the laticlavis, instantly marking his rank. And then the day really begins with the salutatio.
Ah, the morning reception. A key ritual.
A crowd gathers at his door, clients, plebeians, freedmen, people dependent on his favor. They offer respect, deference, maybe promises of votes or support.
And in return, he offers patronage. Maybe some legal advice, a small loan, perhaps just a basket of food, the sportula.
It sounds quite transactional.
It absolutely was. But it was also the engine of Roman politics and social cohesion, especially in the Republic. Patronage was the glue holding society together, this intricate web of reciprocal obligations. And for the senator, it was a daily, visible demonstration of his gravitas, his influence, his reach.
Imagine the scene. The senator emerges, toga immaculate, moving through the city, and this whole entourage of clients follows him.
A living testament to his authority. The size and quality of your clientele was a direct measure of your status. It's a performance of power right from the start of the day.
Then off to the forum, the real heart of power. Inside the Senate House, the curia. That's where the big decisions happen.
Debating laws, managing the state's finances, which were colossal, overseeing religious affairs, dictating foreign policy, planning military campaigns.
These guys were basically running the known world.
Pretty much. The weight of that responsibility must have been immense. And the glory, of course. The decisions made in that building, the Senatus Consulta, shaped the lives of millions across continents. It's staggering to think about.
And the politicking involved, the speeches, the alliances.
Oh, absolutely. Constant maneuvering, factional struggles, oratorical battles. It was a high-stakes game.
But then, remarkably, the formal workday often ended around noon.
Yes, the Roman elite valued their leisure time, their odium.
So, off to the baths. The therme.
Very likely. And these weren't just places to get clean. They were magnificent public complexes. Social hubs, gyms, libraries, meeting places.
All rolled into one. So you'd exercise, maybe get a massage, chat with friends.
Conduct business, network, catch up on the latest political gossip, forge alliances. The baths were a vital third space beyond home and the forum. Status was displayed, information exchange, deals were quietly struck. It was a whole social ecosystem.
And the day would often end with the cena, the dinner party.
The highlight for many. Held in the triclinium, the dining room, guests reclining on couches.
Served multiple courses of exotic food, flowing wine, all brought by slaves, of course.
Of course. And these dinners weren't just meals, they were crucial social and political events. Performances of wealth and power.
How so?
The sheer extravagance for our delicacies, imported wines, elaborate presentation. It was all designed to impress, to display your status. Political deals were cemented, alliances tested, reputations made or broken over these long, often decadent evenings. It was an intricate social dance, fueled by food and wine.
And his whole life plays out in the domus. Tell us about that. It wasn't just a house.
No, it was an architectural statement, usually inward-facing, creating a private world away from the city chaos. You'd enter through the vestibulum into a grand atrium, often with an opening in the roofs, the compluvium, letting rain fall into a basin, the impluvium. There'd be a formal study, the tablinum, private bedrooms, and often a beautiful colonnaded garden, the peristyle.
A self-contained universe.
Exactly. A carefully curated stage for the patrician's life, designed to project authority, wealth, and lineage. Every element, from the mosaics on the floor to the frescoes on the walls, was a message. It controlled how you were perceived.
It makes you think. How do our homes, or the homes of the ultra-wealthy today, still function as symbols? Projecting status, influence.
The fundamental human impulse to use our living spaces to signify our place in the world. That hasn't changed much, has it?
Okay, now rip that curtain down. Let's look at the other side of the citizen coin, the plebeian craftsman. A totally different reality.
Utterly different. A life defined by relentless, grinding toil.
His day also starts at dawn, but not in a domus. He's waking up in a cramped, probably single-room apartment in an insula, one of those notorious Roman tenement blocks.
Often dark, noisy, overcrowded.
Breakfast. Simple. Maybe some coarse bread, maybe dipped in watered-down wine, or just water.
Yeah.
Then it's straight out for a long, physically exhausting workday.
In a workshop, maybe hammering metal, shaping pottery, or on a construction site hauling stone.
Yeah.
Or maybe out in the fields just outside the city walls, doing back-breaking agricultural labor.
No grand processions for him, just the daily slog.
Just the trudge to work. And the sensory experience. Completely different. The constant noise of the city, the stench from the streets, the press of bodies, the dust. It was a harsh, demanding urban environment. Survival was the name of the game.
Midday. Lunch is quick and cold, eaten on the job probably. But for many of the urban poor, their very survival depended on something else. The cura and nona.
The grain dole, yes. State-subsidized grain, distributed regularly. For hundreds of thousands in Rome, this wasn't a bonus. It was their staple food. The difference between eating and starving.
A lifeline.
A lifeline, absolutely. Okay. But also, let's be clear, a sophisticated tool of social control. The emperors knew a hungry mob was a dangerous mob. Keeping the populace fed just enough was crucial for maintaining stability. It bought loyalty, or at least quiescence.
Survival often hung by that thread of government provision, a precarious existence.
Deeply precarious. Any disruption to the grain supply from Egypt or North Africa could mean disaster and riots.
What about leisure for the plebeian? The afternoon? Baths, maybe?
Yes, the public baths were open to everyone, relatively cheap, so that was one outlet. But primarily, leisure was state-sponsored spectacle.
Bread and circuses.
Exactly. Panem et circenses. Thrilling, violent chariot races at the massive Circus Maximus, or the bloody, mesmerizing gladiatorial games at the Colosseum.
This wasn't just fun and games, though, was it?
No, it was a calculated political strategy. Distract the masses, give them an outlet for their aggressions, keep them entertained, keep them from focusing on their hardships or questioning the system. It was a powerful social sedative, incredibly effective at maintaining order, binding them to the emperor who provided the show.
Evening comes, back to the insula.
Back to that small, crowded apartment. Often they'd go to bed soon after dark simply because lamp oil was expensive. Save money.
Multiple generations crammed into one room. No privacy.
Absolutely none. Constant proximity to family, neighbors. Life lived largely in public or semi-public spaces. Every argument, every illness, every intimate moment potentially overheard or observed. a stark contrast to the curated privacy of the domus.
And the insulae themselves describe those buildings.
Towering apartment blocks, often 5, 6, even 7 stories high, but frequently built on the cheap timber frames, mud brick infill. Shoddy construction was rampant.
Meaning they were dangerous.
Extremely. Prone to collapse. And catastrophic fires were terrifyingly common. They lacked running water, proper kitchens, private toilets. Residents used public latrines or just dumped waste into the streets. The poorest lived on the upper floors, cheaper rent, but the most dangerous, the first to go in a fire or collapse.
Just vertical slums. Death traps.
That's a fair description. Life in an insula was a daily struggle against squalor, danger, and deprivation. The city itself, the streets, the public fountains, the latrines became their extended living space out of necessity.
It's chilling how closely that mirrors the desperate conditions people endure in unsafe, overcrowded housing in parts of the world today.
The echoes are definitely there. That vulnerability to structural failure, to fire, to lack of basic sanitation, it's a persistent feature of urban poverty across history.
Yet, despite this massive gulf, the senator and the craftsman were connected, weren't they? Interdependent.
Profoundly so. The senator needed the plebeians' votes in the Republic, their support as clients, their presence to affirm his status. The state, run by senators, needed the plebeians to fill the legions, to do the work, and critically, needed to keep them fed and entertained to prevent revolt.
So, a deeply unequal yet undeniably symbiotic relationship.
Exactly, an uncomfortable, fragile balance that somehow held Roman society together, built on privilege, necessity, and control.
All right, let's brace ourselves. We're leaving the world of the citizen now, with all its variations, and descending into, well, the true abyss. The world of the service, the Roman slave.
And here, the fundamental difference is stark. The very concept of personhood just evaporates. Legally, a slave was res.
A thing.
A thing, an object, a piece of property.
Yeah.
Legally indistinct from a tool, an animal, a piece of furniture.
Damn. That legal classification, the implications are just staggering.
They're catastrophic.
Yeah.
It strips an individual of literally everything. Every right, every shred of self-determination, any claim to basic human dignity in the eyes of the law. It's not just subjugation, it's complete objectification.
Reducing a human being to chattel.
It's the sheer moral horror of that legal fiction we have to confront.
Yeah.
The deliberate, systematic denial of someone's humanity for economic and social purposes. Their body, their labor, their time, their potential, all just assets belonging to someone else.
And how did people end up in this state? What were the paths into slavery?
Numerous, tragically. Warfare was the biggest source, especially during Rome's expansionist phase in the Republic. Entire populations of conquered peoples were enslaved en masse.
Captured soldiers, civilians.
Men, women, children. Paraded through Rome in triumphal processions, then sold off in huge slave markets. The Roman military machine was effectively a massive slave procurement enterprise.
Conquest literally fueled by human bondage.
Absolutely. Each victory brought a fresh wave of human misery, displacement, and dehumanization, directly feeding the Roman economy and society. Imagine the trauma your city destroyed, family killed or scattered, and you're suddenly marched off in chains to be sold like livestock.
Terrifying. What else?
Piracy and kidnapping were rife throughout the Mediterranean. A constant threat.
So you could just be snatched.
Easily. Coastal villages were raided, ships were attacked, travelers were vulnerable. One unlucky encounter, and a free person could find themselves enslaved overnight. Must have been a pervasive fear.
That sudden, brutal transition, freedom to bondage in an instant?
Unimaginable. Then there were internal sources, which are just heartbreaking.
Like what?
Extreme poverty sometimes forced desperate parents to sell their own children into slavery, just to survive.
God, that's bleak.
And the practice of infant exposure. Unwanted babies were sometimes abandoned, left out in public places. If they survived, legally they were considered property of whoever found them, and they were almost always raised as slaves.
Choices born of utter desperation.
Unthinkable choices, really. And as the empire stabilized, major conquests became rarer. So another source became increasingly vital.
Breeding.
Natural reproduction, yes. Children born to an enslaved mother automatically inherited her status. Vernae, they were called. Born into slavery. Didn't matter who the father was, could even be the master himself. The child was still property.
So it became self-perpetuating.
Exactly. This became the most crucial source of new slaves, especially in the later empire. It created a generational curse, locking families into servitude for centuries, ensuring a steady supply of labor without constant warfare. Insidious.
But it's crucial to stress this wasn't based on race, right? Unlike later systems.
Absolutely critical distinction.
Yeah.
Roman slavery was not based on ethnicity or skin color. Slaves came from everywhere: Gauls, Germans, Britons, Syrians, Greeks, Africans, you name it. And they could easily share the same ethnic background as their masters.
So it was about power, conquest, economics, not race as the defining factor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It doesn't make the horror any less, of course. But the ideology, the justification was different. It was about status, legal standing, misfortune of war, or birth, not inherent racial inferiority in the way later slavery was rationalized.
Understanding that non-racial basis, it really challenges our assumptions, doesn't it? Shows how exploitation can operate purely on power dynamics.
It broadens our understanding of historical injustice, definitely.
Okay, the legal void, no personal rights. What did that mean in practice?
Total annihilation of legal identity. Slaves couldn't legally marry. Their unions, contubernium, had zero legal standing. Their children, property, as we said.
Couldn't own property themselves.
Nope. Any money or goods they managed to acquire, their peculium, legally belonged to the master. He could let them use it, even accumulate quite a bit sometimes, but he could also take it away at any moment.
Couldn't sue, couldn't testify in court.
Correct. Couldn't bring a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And their testimony was generally considered inadmissible in court unless it was extracted under torture.
Jesus, why torture?
The horrifying logic was that only extreme physical pain could guarantee truthfulness from someone considered inherently untrustworthy, someone who wasn't a full legal person. Their word alone meant nothing legally.
It's systematic dehumanization embedded right into the legal process.
Utterly. Their humanity was just erased by the law. Voiceless, powerless.
And the master's power, Dominica potestas, how far did that extend?
Nearly absolute. Buy, sell, rent out, punish often with extreme brutality, including whipping, branding, sexual exploitation. It was all permissible. At the master's whim.
Life and limb.
Pretty much. If you injured someone else's slave, the legal issue wasn't assault on a person, it was damage to the owner's property, like scratching their cart.
That framing,
Yeah.
damage to property, it's just brutal.
It perfectly illustrates their legal status.
Yeah.
The slave wasn't the victim, the owner was. It's a chillingly logical consequence of defining humans as res. Living in constant existential terror must have been the norm for many. Your fate depended entirely on the character or lack thereof of your owner.
Were there any limits? Did the law ever step in?
Later on, under the empire, some laws did emerge limiting the worst excesses. Forbidding killing a slave without just cause, for example, or requiring magistrates to intervene in cases of extreme, repeated cruelty, giving slaves the right to flee to an emperor's statue for sanctuary sometime.
But the core status didn't change. Still property.
Fundamentally, no. Still property. And this created a massive, unworkable contradiction at the heart of the system.
How so?
Because while the law said they were things, reality demanded otherwise. Romans relied on slaves for incredibly complex tasks. They were managers of estates, skilled artisans, doctors, tutors, accountants, business agents.
So the thing had to act like a person.
Exactly. How do you fully objectify a being you depend on for their intelligence, their judgment, their skills? The law had to bend. Slaves could conduct transactions, manage businesses, accumulate that peculium, which in practice often functioned like their own money, even if legally it wasn't.
It's a paradox.
A massive one. It shows the Romans constantly wrestling with the philosophical impossibility of their own system. They built an empire on a legal lie about human nature, and they had to keep making awkward exceptions to make it function. Systemic cognitive dissonance on a grand scale.
Where do we see similar legal fictions today? Systems that declare one thing while human reality demands another. It's a resonant tension.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
That clash between dehumanizing structures and undeniable human agency.
Now, the slave experience, not monolithic, you said. There was a hierarchy even within this hell.
Oh, definitely. A grim hierarchy, perhaps designed partly to divide and control, dangling threads of hope or relative comfort. At the absolute bottom, the mines and quarries.
Damnatio ad metalla, condemned to the mines.
Effectively a death sentence. Slow, agonizing, conditions were appalling. Dark, cramped, unventilated tunnels, constant danger of collapse, poisonous gases, relentless, physically shattering labor, often in chains.
What's your mind?
Precious metals, iron, stone for building, fuel for the empire's economy and grandeur. But the human cost. Contemporary accounts are horrific. They describe it as a fate so terrible that death was a welcome relief. It was systematic annihilation through labor.
Just hellish. Industrial scale human destruction.
Truly. Then you had the agricultural slaves on the latifundia.
The massive farming estates.
Right. Huge gangs, sometimes hundreds strong, monotonous, backbreaking work from sunrise to sunset, plowing, planting, harvesting under the watchful eye and often the whip of an overseer who might himself be a slave.
What was their life like? Diet?
Subsistence level. Coarse barley bread or porridge, maybe some olives, vegetables, cheap sour wine, just enough calories to fuel the work. Minimum input for maximum output, no comfort, just relentless, brutal monotony. Imagine the sheer physical and mental exhaustion, day after day, year after year.
An existence stripped bare. Just work, eat minimally, sleep, repeat.
Pretty much, a grinding, dehumanizing routine.
But then, closer to the masters, domestic slaves.
Right. Cooks, cleaners, porters, wet nurses, personal attendants, valets, hairdressers. Their material conditions were often much better. Better food, often leftovers from the master's table, better clothing, shelter within the domus, sometimes objectively better off than the poorest free citizens.
But, there's a but again.
A huge but. This was the intimate cage. Better conditions came at the cost of zero privacy. Sleeping in hallways, outside the master's door, constantly under observation, subject to the master's every whim, mood swing, demand.
Including abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Casual physical abuse was common, and sexual exploitation, particularly of female slaves, but also males, was endemic and legally permissible. There was no escape, no private space, no refuge, constant vulnerability. It was a different kind of psychological torment.
Always watched, always available, always subordinate.
Precisely. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless, with constant potential for terror.
And at the top of this slave hierarchy, the skilled and educated ones.
Doctors, accountants, scribes, secretaries, tutors for the kids, the pedagogy, highly valued individuals, often held positions of immense trust and responsibility.
Managing businesses, estates?
Yes, acting as agents for their masters, running shops, overseeing finances, educating the next generation of the elite. They could live in relative comfort, even achieve a degree of influence within the household or business.
But still slaves. Still property.
Still property. That's the ultimate paradox. Immense skill, responsibility, intelligence. Yet legally, they could be sold, beaten, inherited, just like a farm animal. Their well-being entirely depended on the master's personality and perceived value. A slave doctor might be indispensable, treated with respect, but one bad mood from the master, one financial downturn, and he could be sold down the river.
It shows how completely the legal status overrode any personal merit or achievement. Talent was just another asset for the owner.
Exactly. Subsumed by the legal fiction of chattel.
And we see this blindness even in someone like Seneca, the Stoic philosopher.
Right. Seneca wrote eloquently about shared humanity, condemned needless cruelty to slaves, argued for treating them with basic decency.
What?
But he never questioned the institution itself. He accepted slavery as natural, inevitable part of the social order. He could imagine a nicer slavery, perhaps, but not a world without it.
That's a profound moral blind spot. Infuriating, almost.
It reveals how deeply ingrained the institution was. Even the most supposedly enlightened minds couldn't see beyond it. They could tinker around the edges, advocate for less brutality, but challenging the foundation. That seemed impossible or perhaps undesirable because their entire way of life depended on it.
How often do we see that today? People acknowledging the harms of a system, maybe calling for minor reforms, but refusing to question the fundamental structure because it benefits them.
It's a timeless pattern of rationalization, isn't it?
Yeah.
Justifying the unacceptable because it's familiar or advantageous.
Okay, quick myth-busting moment. Galley slaves. Shackled men rowing warships. Ben-Hur style.
Total myth. Almost entirely.
Wait, it's such a powerful image.
Powerful, yes. Historically accurate for ancient Rome? No. Roman warships were complex machines, requiring skill, coordination, and motivation. Rowing effectively, especially in battle, ramming maneuvers, etc., was incredibly demanding.
So slaves weren't used?
Not typically. The Romans were pragmatic. They knew slaves would be unreliable, unmotivated, likely to screw up or even mutiny. Why entrust your vital, expensive warships to resentful, unwilling labor?
Makes sense. So who did row?
Primarily, freeborn Roman citizens, usually from the lower classes, serving their military duty, or sometimes paid allies. Skilled professionals, in effect, motivated by pay, duty, or the prospect of rewards. Only in the most desperate emergencies, like after the disaster at Cannae against Hannibal, did they resort to using slaves, and even then, often promising freedom as an incentive.
So that whole image, the drumbeat, the whip,
belongs mostly to the early modern period with the Barbary pirates or Mediterranean galleys centuries later, not ancient Rome. It's a persistent but incorrect historical trope.
Good to know. The reality. Skilled free men doing a demanding job. Less traumatic, perhaps, but more accurate.
Much more accurate. Tells you something about Roman pragmatism and their understanding of motivation.
Okay, so within this unbelievably harsh system, this abyss of unfreedom, there was, surprisingly, a path out, a glimmer of hope.
Yes, remarkably so, especially compared to some other slave societies in history.
Yeah.
Manumission, the formal freeing of a slave, was relatively common in Rome.
How did it happen? What were the ways?
There were several formal legal methods. Manumissio vindicta was a ceremony before a magistrate. The master, the slave, and a third party called an adsertor libertatis would appear. The master would touch the slave with a ceremonial rod and vindicta and declare them free.
A public legal act.
Very much so. Then there was manumissio censu. Every 5 years during the census, a master could simply have his slave enrolled on the citizen lists. That act alone made them free.
Wow, integrated right into the state's own record keeping.
Exactly. And probably the most common method, manumissio testamento freedom, granted in the master's will upon his death. Many slaves were freed this way, sometimes large numbers at once.
So these weren't just slaves running away. These were structured legal ways to gain freedom, initiated by the master.
Correct. It highlights the controlled nature of the system. Freedom wasn't usually seized. It was granted, often as a reward for long and faithful service, or perhaps because the slave had saved up enough peculium to essentially buy their own freedom for the master. It was a regulated valve.
So you're freed. What happens then? You're just free? A full citizen?
Not quite. You became a libertas, freedman, or freedwoman. You gained a significant chunk of rights, but not everything. You got a limited form of Roman citizenship.
Limited how?
You could vote in some of the assemblies. Crucially, you could own property, make contracts, marry legally, each bis in connubii, huge gains. But you couldn't hold public office. You couldn't join the senatorial or equestrian classes, the traditional elite.
So a step up, but not to the top rung.
Definitely not. It was a transformative step out of the abyss. But full equality wasn't granted to the first generation. The real prize, the truly big deal, was for their children.
Ah, the next generation.
Yes. Children born to a freedman after his manumission were born as full Roman citizens. No limitations. They could hold office, climb the social ladder, fully integrate. It emphasizes that Roman focus on lineage, on inherited status. The freedman cleared the path for his descendants.
So freedom, but maybe with some strings attached.
Yeah.
Or some lingering ties.
Oh, absolutely. Big strengths. Freedmen remained legally and socially bound to their former master, who now became their patronus, their patron.
Like the patrician patrons we talked about earlier.
Similar relationship, but often much more demanding and legally defined. The freedman owed the patron obsequium.
Meaning?
Respectful deference, showing public respect, supporting them politically, not suing them. Basically, acting loyally. And often, they also owed opere. Yes, a specified number of work days or specific services, often negotiated as part of the manumission agreement, potentially lasting for the freedman's entire life.
So freedom wasn't always total freedom. It was conditional.
Very often conditional. The patron-client bond morphed from ownership to a lifelong dependency. This was incredibly useful for the patron. It incentivized loyalty in slaves, hoping for freedom, and it secured a loyal, dependent workforce or support base even after they were freed. A very shrewd social and economic mechanism.
Imagine that psychologically. You're free, but you still have to go work for your old master X days a year, still have to bow and scrape to some extent.
A complex, often burdensome reality. Freedom, but with continuing obligations and the shadow of the past always present.
And socially, do they just blend in?
Not easily. Freedmen carried the macula servitudis, the stain of slavery, often for life. There was significant social prejudice against them, especially from the old aristocratic families.
Snobbery.
Intense snobbery. Particularly directed at freedmen who became wealthy, which many did through trade, crafts, business. The figure of the nouveau riche freedman, fabulously wealthy, but seen as lacking culture, taste, and proper Roman gravitas, became a stock character for ridicule in Roman literature and satire, like Trimalchio and Petronius's Satyricon.
So, you could make money, but respect was harder to come by.
Much harder. It reveals the deep-seated anxiety of the Roman elite about social mobility, about new money challenging the established order based on ancient lineage. They clung fiercely to those distinctions. Economic success didn't automatically erase the perceived taint of having once been property.
And thinking about today, how long does it take for legal equality to translate into genuine social acceptance? How do past stigmas, past stains, continue to affect groups even after laws change?
It's a persistent issue, isn't it? The lag between legal rights and social reality. Prejudice often outlives the laws that once supported it. The Roman freedman experience is a powerful historical case study of that very phenomenon.
So wrapping this up, what we've really uncovered today isn't one Rome, it's two. Two profoundly different worlds, existing side by side, completely interdependent, yet worlds apart.
Absolutely. The citizen's world, defined by rights, by law, by the potential for political agency, by the power of family and inheritance, a world with structure and, for many, privilege.
And the slave's world, defined by the complete absence of rights, by total dependency, by the constant brutal demands of labor, and the ever-present threat of violence. An abyss.
And the crucial point is their interdependence. The senator reclining at his lavish dinner party, debating philosophy in the forum, commanding legions, his entire lifestyle, his leisure, his ability to participate in high culture and politics.
It was all built on the suffering of others.
It was underwritten entirely by the brutalized, forced labor of countless slaves toiling unseen on his estates, in his mines, within the walls of his own home. This wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the dam system, the engine driving it all.
And that central idea, libertas, freedom.
It drew its very meaning, its sharp, potent clarity, from the constant, terrifying presence of its opposite, servitus, slavery.
You knew what it meant to be free precisely because you saw every single day what it meant not to be. The value of freedom was defined by the horror of its absence.
A brutal, stark contrast that was fundamental to the Roman psyche.
And this legacy, this foundational inequality, this institutionalized system of treating people as property.
Yeah.
It's complicated, disturbing.
Deeply disturbing. Yet Rome's concepts of law, citizenship, rights, even forged in this brutal crucible, and the very questions raised by this stark contrast between human dignity and utter dehumanization. They've echoed down through Western civilization.
For better or worse.
For better and worse. It forces us again and again to grapple with what true freedom means, what human rights entail, and how societies create and maintain hierarchies. The Roman shadow is long. Hashtag tag outro.
So here's something to chew on as you go about your day. With all the protections, the rights, the privileges you probably take for granted, how much is our modern understanding of value, of labor, of freedom itself, still subtly shaped by the echoes of these ancient, brutal divisions?
That's a challenging question.
What unspoken contracts, what unseen or undervalued labor, what subtle forms of dependency or even dehumanization might still underpin the comforts and liberties we enjoy today? It's not just Rome's past we're talking about here, is it? It feels uncomfortably relevant to our present.
Perhaps this deep dive encourages you to look a little closer, to question the foundations of things we accept as normal. Understanding these ancient chasms, these historical structures of inequality, might just help us see the subtle, sometimes insidious divisions that persist in our own time.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning.
And keep deep diving.